Okay, good morning. So I get to introduce myself in front of Mary, so that's kind of fun. So this talk, my name is Adam Weiner. I write an article for the Gold Medal Classroom called 15-Minute Classroom. Anybody ever read it? Okay, pretend you've read it. Everybody have read it? Wow, that's great. I know you haven't. Okay, so the thrust of the article is how to teach professional level. We're getting something going. How to teach professional level culinary things in a high school context. And everybody says, but Adam, you don't really do that. You have a 6-hour class. Most of my students have a 3rd to 4th grade education level, so I basically have to run my class like a high school class. It's run in 50-minute segments. Might be 5 of them one day, but each one is basically run as a 50-minute segment. So this talk is 3 years in the making. Several years ago, Mary asked me to do a round table for high school people at the lunch, high school instructors at the lunch. And one woman says, well, the problem I have in my class is within 3 weeks, 3/4 of my students drop out. And I said, why? And they said, well, they complain because they want to, that's where we're going to run into problems. They want to learn how to cook, but before I let them in the kitchen, I spend 3 to 4 weeks on food safety. And I said, you can't do that. You can't do that. They are, not really academic students. You're going to lose everybody like you're losing them. She says, but it takes 3 to 4 weeks to do this. No, it doesn't. You can teach food safety in 50 minutes. A couple years ago at Utah, somebody said to Mary, we'd like to have, I gave a presentation. They said, that was great. We'd like to have more presentations to set up for high school teachers. So that's what we're talking about today. So we're going to hope that the PowerPoint comes on board soon. And we're going to start as presuming I don't have PowerPoint. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to talk to you like a group of teachers. I'm going to do it like I do it for my students. They're taping it, so guess what? And you're going to be able to download it. So from now on, you don't have to teach food safety in your class. She sees where I'm going on that. You look confused. Just show the video to the students. And you say, Adam is a certified food service educator, and he's done all this stuff. Okay, so here we go. We got the video. So again, hopefully they can get onto this. Okay, basic food safety. So let's go to our little first handy-dandy page here. 1993, what started the food safety movement? 1993, a young mother, as a reward to her son, takes him to Jack in the Box in San Diego. She remembers. Takes him to Jack in the Box in San Diego for a hamburger. 2 days later, he's dead. Boy was like 4 years old. Everybody said, this is terrible, this is wild, this is incredible, this is amazing, but it's a fluke. It's a fluke. Guess what happens 2 days later? Child dies in Oregon after eating at Jack in the Box. Okay? So we have, at Jack in the Box 1993, 732 people were infected with E. coli, 73 outlets in California, Idaho, Washington, Nevada. 4 children under the age of 10 died. 178 other victims had permanent injuries. Well, that sounds like a long time ago, right? The world has changed, everything is safer. Sound familiar? According to the Center for Disease Control, as of January 27, 2016, reports a total of 55 people infected with the outbreak of E. coli from a total of 11 states in California, Delaware, Illinois, Kentucky, Maryland, Minnesota, New York, Ohio, Oregon, Pennsylvania, and Washington. Chipotle. All right. So the food, although it started back in 1993, California was the first state required that at least one person in every state and every company that handles food be certified as a food safety handler. What was the problem? There's 2. They always sent a very junior person to the training, so nobody ever listened to that junior person. And of course, that person is not there. If you get something like Jack in the Box that runs 168 hours a week, guess what? That person's only there 40. So California, again, being the first, California and Washington at the same time, expanded out. Everybody has to now have a food safety handler card, and there has to be one food safety manager card. So what is food safety and what's it all about? Food safety is keeping people from getting sick from what happens in your kitchen. Food safety is about keeping people from getting sick what happens in your kitchen. Everybody says, well, I got the stomach flu. I can't come into school today because I got the stomach flu. Very, very, very unlikely. Very unlikely. Stomach flu is extremely rare. Stomach flu is extremely, extremely rare, except for high school students who pretended they didn't drink too much over the weekend. Okay, all right. It's almost assuredly food poisoning. All right, so as I said a couple of moments ago, there are two types of licenses. There's a manager and a food handler's license. They're available online. This class, what I'm doing today, what you're going to be teaching your students is not a replacement for the ServSafe, okay? It's an introduction to get people cooking in a high school kitchen right away without making anybody else sick. When they go out to work, they're still going to need that ServSafe. By the way, the easiest, fastest, cheapest way to do it, there are places, the National Restaurant Association and others has about $8, $9 online. It takes about 2.5 hours. For the managers, it takes a tad longer. It's a lot more expensive. It takes about 2 days to do the managers when all is said and done. For the food handlers, it's about 2.5 hours. What we do in my class is they take this class, I have them do this class, they're in the kitchen for about a week, and then I have them take the class online. It's a lot less expensive than even having somebody come in and administer the test. All right, so let's go over the basics of food safety. Am I on? Coming back on the Windows. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about personal hygiene. We're going to talk about food storage. We're going to talk about cross-contamination. We're going to talk about food handling and preparation. Fat Tom, yes, Fat Tom. I have taught in my program for 13 years. I always feel sorry for the instructor before me. Any guesses what his name was? Who said Tom? You said Tom? Good guess, but it was Fat. Okay, no, his name was Tom. Tom, Chef Tom. I always felt sorry for him when he had to teach his class. Okay, Hawaiian imported candy. Candy's imported from Hawaii, because a week and a half ago I was with my wife in Hawaii, and we were in Walmart, because what do you do when you're a tourist in Hawaii? You go to Walmart, right? So I said, gee, they had a sale on candy, and I said, hey, that way when we go to Chicago, I don't have to hunt for candy. I'll just pack it now, right? Of course, what's right across the street from the hotel is a Walgreens. So it's called planning. Okay, we're going to talk about the frosting. We're going to talk about rodent and insect prevention, and we're going to talk about HACCP. All right. Okay, but here's something you need to know. Many of the issues, so by the way, if you say, oh, you said something before about Jack in the Box, I'm sorry. Pardon me. Falling behind here, I got flustered about the PowerPoint. Okay, many of the issues of food safety overlap. All right, I realize that, okay? It's kind of like cooking. Well, gee, braising involves, more than one just technique. There's several, you got to brown, you sear off the outside before you braise. So you've got searing and, so just like that, food safety is the same way. So for example, cross-contamination. What's the biggest issue in cross-contamination? What's the biggest source of cross-contamination? Hand washing. Who said hand washing? You said hand washing. Okay. Who else said hand washing? By the way, don't fall asleep in my class. I'll hit you right in the head with the can. Okay. And bacteria growth and defrosting, of course, other than food storage is always a big thing in cross-contamination. All right. So we see on the next page, the 10 most likely things to make someone sick in a commercial kitchen are what? Not fingernails, okay? When the PowerPoint, I show the PowerPoint, it says fingernails. The 10 most likely things to make somebody sick are what? Fingers. You're not allowed to rethrow them. You are not allowed to rethrow them. You're stepping on my territory here, okay? Okay, so your students are probably washing their hands wrong. You know they're washing their hands wrong. Okay, so what's the first thing you do? What's the first thing they don't do? By the way, I have them watch the scene, if you can, in Ratatouille. Okay, where the first thing what's he do? Before he makes the soup, he goes to wash his hands. What's he do? He turns on the cold water, The rat, not linguine, okay? All right, turns on the cold water, and he goes like this, no soap, no 20 seconds, no towel, no under the fingernails, no nothing, okay? All right, so I showed them that scene, because then we look at the scene where they run all the rats through the dishwasher, which you guys gotta love that one. Okay, all right, get the water as hot as they can, use the nail brush. How many have nail brushes in their classrooms? And I did, okay, good, all right, whoa. All right, make sure the nail brush sits in some sort of mild bleach solution. Otherwise, you're just cross-contaminating everybody back and forth. Get high up past your wrist. That's why chef coats are cut the way they are. Okay, that's why chef coats are cut the way they are. You got to get them up past your wrist. All right, and kind of hard to do. And dry your hands with paper towels or the hair dryer. All right. Anybody watch Big Bang Theory? Besides me. Remember the scene where the one where Sheldon talks? Oh, raise your hand. Okay. Sheldon talks about the just installed hair dryers at work, and he says it's like being blown on by a plague-infested gibbon. You know, and I always think about that now with hair dryers. I flash back to that scene. Okay, but all right, paper towels or the hair dryer. All right, personal hygiene. Let's talk about one of my most favorite subjects in life: gloves. Gloves. Gloves are what? The worst thing that has ever been pushed on chefs and instructors by the government. I teach 1 day a week in the jail. In the jail, I see the worst of it. I'm teaching guys in jail. And what do? They come in the classroom and they go like this. On the table they're going to cook on, and they tie the shoes. And then what do? They walk over and they grab the gloves. So all those germs, okay, all those germs are where? On the palm of the glove. And then they fight with it. And it's like, hey, trying to get this glove on, and we're working on getting the glove, and we're doing this, and and what? Everything that was on here is now on here, right? And the worst part about it, gloves in the medical profession are designed to do what? Keep the doctor and nurse clean, safe. Gloves, in theory, in food service are to keep the customers safe. So what do I see all the time? I see somebody picking up raw chicken, and then they go to the salad bar, and they get ready to put the lettuce. What are you doing? It's okay, chef, I'm wearing gloves. I'm wearing gloves. Okay, so, and all the studies have come up with what? Showing what? People who wear gloves, their hands are more dirty. The palm of the gloves are more dirty than people who wash their hands. And what did I just do? I took it off. So what am I supposed to do with this now? I just took it off. What do I do with it? Throw it out. They're single-use gloves, right? They're single-use gloves. Okay? Hey, we got it. Now, can we cut that out? And let's get to, where'd my mouse go? All right, wonderful. Yay.
Where are you?
Keep going, a couple more, one, two, all right. I used to teach my son's now an Eagle Scout when I was in college, but I taught all the cooking merit badges over the years. You want to see something cute? You want to see 15 6-year-old Boy Scouts lined up singing, row, row, row your boat gently, happy birthday to me, happy birthday to me. Okay, all right. Gloves are up. So what do you see all the time with gloves? You go to a deli, right? Or a small like mom and pop sandwich shop, and what do? They make your sandwich, take the gloves off, take your money, and then put the gloves back on. What's the point? Hair nets. Okay, personal hygiene, hair nets and hats. Even if your hair is clean, you got to wear them. All right. I tell my students, if your hair is longer than mine, you have to have a hairnet. I am the measure. Okay? If it is longer than mine, you got to wear a hairnet. I taught for years part-time with the Navy. The Navy has no discretion. You must wear a hat in the galley. And they have these little paper hats that on every entrance to the galley. If you don't have a regular hat, you can put on these little paper hats. You would see these completely bald admirals walk in and putting on like these little paper, hats, really cutesy, walk through the galley kitchen and walk out. All right? And I tell my students is no manager wants, even if the hair is clean, no manager wants to what? Give a free dinner away because there was hair in the food. All right? No manager wants to do that. All right. Okay, personal hygiene. How many of your students think it's really cool and shows how great they are to get food all over their coats or aprons? Anybody got that problem with me? Uh-oh, she's got that problem. Okay. You got it. It's a mark of professionalism to be clean, not dirty. I had a student named Stephanie O'Dowd about 10 years ago. I still remember her name because I could never figure out how this woman would get food all down the back of her coat. And occasionally I run into her, and I always joke about the guacamole that she had dead center in her back. How do you have guacamole on the back of your chef coat? Okay? The purpose of chef coats are to keep a big issue with students. I need to go to the bathroom. What do? They walk off with their apron. Health department seriously frowns on that. So and the students always go, why? Do I really need to explain this to you? You know, if something is hanging down here, what happens to it? Okay. All right. The purpose of the chef coats, etc. apron is not to keep your clothes clean. It's to keep what? Food clean. Food clean. Okay, personal hygiene. I'm teaching a class, professional level class. They're designed out to get jobs. So I explain to them that, because I get students, oh my gosh, I got a hangnail, I'm going to take 4 days off of class. So I have to explain to my students in this industry, anybody know why 97% of the people in this industry get fired? They don't show up for work and what? 15 minutes early. 15 minutes early is what? Well, I say it's late. Okay. All right. All right. 15 minutes. All right. You're looking like, oh my gosh, she's not noticing me in the last row. All right. 15 minutes early. Okay. So I explained to them that just because you have a cough or a sneeze, I'm not talking, then because if you're really sick, stay home. But I guess some student will wake up in the morning, sneeze once, oh, I'm not coming to class for 3 days. By the way, you need to teach your students how to sneeze. For the rest of their lives, they are no longer to sneeze or cough into their hands. Where do they sneeze or cough into? Elbow. We sneeze into the elbow. Okay? You can always tell a chef when they're out in public. Cough or sneeze, and they're like this. Right? I also tell my students back to hands. Who invented the hand bumping gesture? Where did that come from? It's from sports. I said, no. It came from chefs because they'd walk by each other in the kitchen and knuckles don't touch the food. So they would bump knuckles. It was started created by chefs. All right, not every, okay. So let's talk a little bit about food safety is a lot about cross-contamination, a lot about personal hygiene, and a lot about potentially hazardous or dangerous foods. All right, potentially hazardous, dangerous foods. Potentially dangerous foods are foods that, if not handled, cooked, or stored properly, can make you sick. Real simple, right? Everybody talks about all this complicated. If you don't handle it right, cook it, store it, handle it, it's going to make you sick. That's all you need to know. How do you decide if something is a potentially hazardous food? Who's taken the full Safe Serve class? Okay? It took you days, right? I'm going to teach you in 10 seconds how to decide whether or not something is a potentially hazardous food. If the food was stored in the trunk of my car for 3 days, would I eat it? What's the answer? Depends on the type of the food. Okay, almost all my students will say immediately no. Okay? So here's where we start going through different. Okay, canned tuna fish with a can of seal. It's been in my trunk of my car for 3 days. Would you eat it? Sure. Dried pasta. Bag of Fritos that's not been opened. Would you eat it? Sure. Cooked pasta. Raw chicken. Raw chicken that's in a can, that the can's not been opened. Maybe. Okay? So a question for cooked chicken in the can that's not been opened. Okay? So that's the standard to use if something's to have. So you will see me walk into the class. I'll say, why is that sitting on the counter? Why is that in the walk-in? It doesn't need to be. If that was in the trunk of my car for 3 days, would you eat it? No, chef. Then it needs to go in the walk-in. All right. By the way, potentially hazardous foods can change. Something that is not, it goes both ways. Eggs. Would you eat eggs if they've been in the trunk of my car for 3 days? No. If you cooked it into a bread? Probably. Change the format, okay? So it goes both ways. But if you take rice, dried rice, it's okay to eat till you cook it. Guess what happens? It's in the trunk of my car. Okay, so let's talk about food storage. There are 4 simple rules about food storage. Do not store potentially dangerous foods above non-dangerous foods. By the way, you know all this, right? I'm doing this right, so you can see how to do it in 15 minutes. All right? Store foods at the correct temperature. Label prepared foods. That's the one high school teachers tend to be weak on, right? If you're teaching a professional standards class, get them used to it. Store chemicals separately. All right, so from bottom to top, so we're going to talk about what goes on the very bottom. Raw poultry. There's nothing more nasty food-wise than raw poultry. This is all based on what? It's all based on what? Cooking temperatures to make it safe. So raw poultry on the bottom, raw hamburger, raw sausage, raw whole meat, raw fish is on the top. Why? Raw fish, most fishes need to go to 135 degrees, cooked to 135 degrees or less to be safe. So if the raw poultry drips to the raw chicken, you're okay. Yes, ma'am?
I've always wondered this. Why do most refrigerators have like the vegetable crisper at the very bottom?
Home refrigerators?
Yeah.
You know, I've looked into that. I actually have looked into that, and I've come across 2 explanations. One is it dates back to the ages of ice boxes. Okay? It dates back to the age of ice boxes, as that was the best place to keep them fresh, the way the ice was set up. And number 2 is I've heard that basically it's just that's what customers want. Okay, so what do I have in my refrigerator? The meat drawer is above where? The produce drawer. About as stupid as you can get, right? Okay, I recently went shopping with my wife several weeks ago. We have a condo in Hawaii, and I come back and I open up the meat drawer. Honey? Because she's not professionally trained. She doesn't do cooking, and normally she and I do not get along well in the kitchen together. Honey, why are there onions in the meat drawer? And she said, because the bag person didn't bag them up correctly and they had meat juice on them, so I didn't want you to use them in raw contact, so I knew if you put them in the meat drawer and they saw that they had been exposed to meat, I knew that you would cook them before serving them. Oh my gosh, 31 years and she has listened once in a while, okay? Sarah knows my wife well, she's going to go back and report that story to Marie, okay? But yeah, I was like, oh cool, now I know how to get it right, okay. Okay, so always put cooked foods or foods that won't be cooked should be stored above everything else, or preferably in a separate area. Anything that might drip, even if it's wrapped, should be placed in an appropriate food storage container before going in the refrigerator. What do you see all the time? People go to the store and they buy the packages of chicken, right? Oh, it's wrapped up, and they throw it in the meat drawer. What happens? It drips. It drips. All right. So food storage, between 41 degrees and 135 is the what? The danger zone, right? All right? You got to keep food out of the danger zone. Right now, really great time for, in most parts of the country, really great time for bacteria growth, right? We're right in that danger zone. Most parts of the country require no more than 4 hours, food no more than 4 hours in the danger zone. And by the way, that's a cumulative time in the danger zone. That doesn't mean each time the food is out. So how I explain it to students is, you're at a chickens for where we are come from about 100 miles away in Livingston, which is in the Central Valley of California, which is a very warm city. So I said, okay, so the truck pulls up to the back door, and they open up the door to the truck, and so all the hot air from the outside goes into the back of the truck, and they take the pallet of chickens and put it inside the truck. They shut the door of the truck. It takes time for that reefer truck to come down to temperature. 15, 20, half hour, you don't know. Let's say a half an hour. Okay, and then they go over to, let's say, Cisco, and they open up the door, and it's on the loading dock while somebody checks in Cisco for 15 minutes before it goes into the refrigerator. Well, now you're up to 45. Well, then they load it up and reverse the process, and the Cisco truck store is open several times during the day, and it goes in and out. So by the time I tell my students, by the time that food gets to the back door, you have to presume you have what? Zero. You've got to presume that food can never be in the danger zone. And the reason is that is because it's how bacteria reproduce. Okay? Yeah, I realize in some high schools you can't talk about sex, fine, then don't talk about sex. It's not about sex, it's time, it's temperature. All right? It's not about sex, it's time and temperature. Most bacteria split in the danger zone in about 12 to 20 minutes. So if you only were very lucky and only had one piece of one bacteria on a food, that's one. In 20 minutes, 2, another 20 minutes, 4, another 20 minutes, 8, 16, 32. So just in a period of a little over a couple of hours, you got 4,000 bacteria. And of course, what's the problem? You never start out with just what? Never start out with just one. You've always got a lot of bacteria, and all of a sudden it goes up to 4,000. Okay, getting it out of the danger zone kills the bacteria, right? Who said no? Who else said no? Who else said no? Somebody else said no. Come on, please tell me somebody else said no. Okay, no, it slows down the bacteria. All right, why? Okay. They just slow them down. Now, if you really want to get racy in how you explain it, I say, look, I know it's not sex, but think about it kind of like, if it's really cold out and the two bacteria come together and say, hi, do you want to do one? And it says, absolutely, positively not. You know, it's too cold down, cold outside. Well, what about if it's on the other end, really too warm? No, we don't want to do that because just don't touch me, it's too warm. Yes, I know it's not sex, but the students remember when you go through those analogies, okay? All right. 4 hours max in that danger zone for the life of the food. That's what we talked about before with that. Okay, so what do you do after you cook something? Got to chill it down, right? Really tough problem in high school because what? You're at the end of the period. You're at the end of the period, right? You got to chill it down. You got to chill it down fast. Ice baths are half ice, half water. How you teach the students How you teach your students that an ice bath is colder than just ice, because what do? They fill up the tray with ice. How I teach the students is I get each one of them a paper cup with just ice in it and an ice bath. I give each one a paper cup, 2 cups actually, one of each, right? What do? Put your fingers in it. See how long you can keep your finger in each. And what happens? In about 30 seconds to a minute, it comes out of the ice bath. Meanwhile, you're going on with your whole lecture with your finger in the ice. Okay? Gets that point across ice bath. Small batches, ice paddles. Metal cools down faster than plastic containers. All right? That's why the plastics, don't try and chill things down in the plastic containers. Temperature abuse. What's temperature abuse? That's always a tough one. Everybody know what temperature abuse is? Versus, it's not, I'll give you clues. Not being out of the danger zone. What's temperature abuse? Everybody know what IQF means? What's IQF? Individually quick frozen. So you go to your supermarket and a bag of shrimp says IQF, which means they're all supposed to be individually, right? And you hold up the bag and they're all clumped together. Or there's a big chunk of ice frozen in the corner of the bag. What's that mean? The bag's been defrosted and frozen and defrosted and frozen, defrosted and frozen. That's temperature abuse. You take something that's frozen, defrosted or half defrosted, put it back in the freezer. That's temperature abuse. Label prepared foods before they go into the reefer or the storeroom. You must label prepared foods or they go in the reefer. Another problem, and I know why in high school, is because same thing, run out of time. You're at the end of the day, you run out of time. Again, I'm trying to teach. Okay, so let's talk a couple examples. Whoever watches Restaurant Impossible? What does he almost always do at the beginning of the show? He opens up the refrigerator and says, how long has this been sitting here? I can't tell. I can't tell how long this has been sitting. When did you make this? It's not labeled. And what's he have them do? Throw it out. Good friend of mine, Ramon Lopez. By the way, his wife's name is Jennifer, so we call her J-Lo. Okay. He owns a small Italian restaurant in my neighborhood. All right. He has a Friday night, of course, is a busy night. He seats about 120. He's got 2 turns on the reservation book. So he's got food prepared for about 250 people that night for dinner. The next day, during the day, he's doing a wedding reception. So he's got food prepared for that. Right? And they've got dinner on Saturday night. So they get in early, they order all this food, comes in on Thursday, they get in very early Friday morning, they prepare everything. Who comes in at 4:45? Any of you guys who comes in at 4:45 after they prepared everything and put it away without labels on it? Who said the health inspector? Oh, you got too much candy. Somebody else say the health inspector? Okay. All right, the health inspector walks in, opens up all the refrigerators, sees all these trays of food, none of it labeled, throw it all out. Because I guess now who can't open for dinner? There's no food, so they have to put up the sign, closed for dinner. You know, what's to do for a restaurant besides the income, the publicity, closed for dinner on a Friday night. All the reservations, you're frantically calling people, were closed, okay? They now have to run off to Costco, pay again for the food, buy food that isn't as good as what was delivered, stay up all night so they could do the wedding, and why? Because they didn't take that time to label the foods. All right? So even if you're not going to do it for food safety, remember Robert Irvine and Ramon Lopez. And rule 4, this is the one most commonly violated, to be honest, in commercial kitchens. Never put chemicals near or above food for any reason at any time. And I bet if you back to your classrooms, you're going to find cleaning solutions. She's saying no, so she's checked. But you're going to find cleaning solutions on the shelves above the sink, and the students are doing their preps in the sink. She's saying no also, good. Because I've been in way too many classrooms where I've seen that. They've got cleaning solutions above. All right? I teach 1 day a week in jail. Okay? And the other day I saw somebody was spraying Pam on the baking sheets. And I looked out of the corner of my eye because I've got 15 guys in jail and they don't know how to cook. And I'm the only instructor in there, and I see out of the corner of my eye something that looks funny. I walk over and say, can I see that can for a second? Because I don't remember, I saw a blue streak on the can. It was Dow oven cleaner.
Oh boy.
I said, where did you get that can? And he walks over and shows me, and there's a row of Pam spray, and right next to it is a row of, and he just grabbed the yellow can. Okay? Speaking of temperatures, know how to use the thermometer. All right? Know how to use the thermometer. Know the different types and limitations. Students love playing with the laser thermometers, right? Oh, it sends out that light, and we go, what's the problem with the laser thermometer? It only reads what? The outside temperature. Chef, this turkey is way overdone. It's cooked to 350 degrees. No, that's the outside temperature of the turkey. The inside's still probably about 40. It's only been in the oven for 10 minutes. Okay? Instant read thermometers, like one of the ones I have over there. Not really instant read, right? Students say, oh, it says instant read thermometer. Instant read thermometer. Great. They put it in, take it out in 3 seconds. Takes about some time. Know where the sensor points are. This is where you often find students making mistakes. So in this one, I brought this sample. I was kind of thought about carrying this on the airplane, my carry-on, and decided not to do that. Okay. So you find the little dimple, right? Cute little dimple. It's way up there. That means from here to there needs to be in the product. So if you're cooking something thin, a chicken patty, a hamburger patty, or a chicken breast, a hamburger patty, you got to go in sideways. Because what happens? You'll see the student do like that. It's not doing the temperature. On the digitals, it's all the way up. It's only up to there. Everybody knows how to calibrate a thermometer, right? Ice bath. Ice bath should be what temperature? 32 degrees, right? Ice bath is 32 degrees. Almost every thermometer is going to have some sort, the digital ones don't. These have some sort of wrench in them. Here, the wrench is up here, which is really tough to do because you're taking it out of the water to do that. Hold in the water. Make an ice bath. Let it sit for about 2 or 3 minutes so it becomes 32 degrees. Don't touch the outside of the glass, okay? Should be 32. If not, you got the little wrench to adjust it. So also, okay? So that's for holding in the ice water like that. Unfortunately, this one, the wrench is up here, so I have to take it out. When do you calibrate a thermometer? Every time you do what with it begins with a D, which everybody says they never ever do. Every time you drop the thermometer, got to recalibrate it. I never drop the thermometer. Oh, garbage. I drop them at least 2 or 3 times a week. Okay? You know, I always drop your thermometer. And then basically another 2 or 3 days if you don't drop it. I've had students, so it's like, okay, let me calibrate that thermometer for you. And it's just like, 78 degrees and it's an ice bath. It's like, that's why that chicken came out raw. Watch for cross-contamination. What do students do? Pull this out. Take a temperature of the chicken. The chicken's at 135 degrees. It's not quite done. What do they then do with this? I dare anybody to figure out how to wash the inside of that out, okay? Okay? You can't. When I loan students thermometers, what do? I hang on to the case. Here's the thermometer. Where's the case, chef? You don't need to know. All right? You're supposed to have the sanitizing wipes. Most commercial kitchens don't. How do most commercial kitchens wash? Into the sanitation bucket or hand sink, wash it off with you. Is it ideal? No, but it's a lot better than putting it in the sleeve. Okay, so cross-contamination, what is it? Google it and get over 12 million hits. 12 million hits on Google. Cross-contamination is exposing a non-potentially hazardous food to one that's potentially hazardous. Okay? Nachos. Okay, so you got nacho chips. Wonderful. And you're going to put what? Shredded meat on top of it. The nacho chips are not potentially hazardous. The shredded meat is. If you don't cook that meat correctly, you've now got contaminated nacho chips. Exposing one potentially hazardous food like raw fish to a more hazardous food like chicken. Get that all the time. Well, chef, you can't use that cutting board for fish. Use it for chicken. Oh, it's okay, chef. I'm going to cook them both. Okay? Or not storing potentially hazardous food correctly. Remember placement, remember containers, okay, remember temperatures. So some of the most common examples, using your hands to pick up shrimp or fish or chicken or beef and then cut up cheese, using a meat slicer for cooked turkey breast, and then several hours later using it to slice onions. I have been in high school classes. I work with high school. The class 1 is an advanced class. So they're slicing chicken or turkey on the slicer. Class number 2 comes in and starts slicing cheese an hour later. And the instructor said, but the chicken was cooked. Well, yeah, but it's now been over an hour. Okay? Cutting up ribs on a cutting board. All of these things, by the way, I've seen. Wiping the cutting board off with a dry towel and then cutting unwashed mushrooms, wiping the board and cutting up fruit. Touching raw chicken and then touching anything else. Using a knife, tongs, cutting board, towel, etc. with raw proteins and then touching anything else. By the way, so if you watch in commercial kitchens, when chefs have to put things in a pan, or cooks have to put things in a pan, what do? They always put them in what? Their hand. And they turn more with the tongs. Because what do you see with your students? They use a pair of tongs, and they pick up that piece of raw chicken off the plate, and they put it in the pan. And then what do they do to turn the chicken over? Use the same tongs and turn it up. And then what do they use to pull that chicken out of? The restaurant type, I'm not going to mention it by name, but it begins with a B. Everybody's seen the Japanese restaurants where they cook things at the table in front of you. I've always wondered. I go there. I love them. My kids love them. This is like birthday for the kids and all this stuff, anniversaries and everything. But they're putting raw meat on the grill, cutting it, and then later they do the vegetables. Okay? Using tongs or a spatula on raw product, then using the same tongs or spatula. Okay, there are hundreds of examples of cross-contaminant. Okay, there are 3 basic types of food contamination. Food contamination is, cross-contamination is when you take one potentially hazardous food, expose it to another or not. Food contamination is the 3 types where the food is just contaminated on its own. That's how that bacteria got on there. Biological bacteria contamination, sneezes, unwashed hands, restroom use, etc. To physical, where something is not food, rubber bands, Band-Aids, hair, broken glass gets into the food, and C, chemical. The second one is really prevalent. Why? Because nobody cleans as they goes. The biggest one that I always start yelling at, my little pet peeve, what do people do? They're going to make grilled cheese sandwiches, right? They take the little plastic thing off the end of the bread, and where do they put it? Right on their cutting board. And then they put the bread down. And then they put the cheese on top. And they butter it up. And they, okay. All right. I said, are you going to use that again? No, chef. Throw it away or recycle it in our case. Okay. Get that off the table. Anything you can get off the table. Chemical contamination, the bleaching solution is too strong. Okay. But more likely it's somebody just doing something stupid, like I talked about a couple minutes ago in jail. The chemicals are stored wrong. Okay. Don't worry about trying to read this. You can get this off the website. This is the USDA style of cooking. I will say right now, most chefs, restaurant chefs, corporate chefs, etc., will tell you this is way too high a temperature. They won't do that. They are not going to take steaks. They're not going to take steaks to 145 degrees. Okay? But for taking the ServSafe exam, guess what standards you use? All right? Yes, I know nobody, I shouldn't say no. Yes, I know there are a lot of chefs, most, nearly all, who don't follow that, but for the test purposes. Reheating your leftovers safely. When reheating your leftovers, be sure they reach 165 degrees as measured with a food thermometer. Reheat sauces, soups, and gravies by bringing them to a rolling boil. Cover leftovers to reheat. This retains moisture and ensures that the food will heat all the way through, USDA style. And most importantly, for commercial purposes, only reheat once. Do we do it at home more than once? Oh, I do all that. You don't? Great for you, good for you. I reheat it on more than once all the time. I'm at home. Okay, it's my problem. Nobody's paying for it. That's not my license in the kitchen, et cetera, et cetera. By the way, I'll say, do any of you get health inspected? The health inspector can be sometimes your best friend. So if you ever have the health inspection come in when the students are there, stop the class. Let the students follow the health inspection. Okay? If you teach a commercial level class, or even a home class, like a home ec class, call up the health department. Ask if they'll come in. They'd love to come in as guest lecturers. They are wonderful to come in as guest lecturers. Okay? If your class is mostly females, ask that they send a female inspector over. They are wonderful stuff. A great resource. It's free, and they're happy to do it. All right. Have them come over. I've known other instructors at other institutions that have kind of had a problem. They wanted a new piece of equipment or whatever, something was broken or wrong. And the health inspector would come in and they would like stand next to the refrigerator and point at the thermometer on the refrigerator. And the health inspector would look over, oh, okay, you're out of temperature compliance. And they write that, your refrigerator out of temperature compliance. And they go to the administration. Next week, guess who had a new refrigerator? Okay? All right. Fortunately, my administration's pretty darn good. I don't have to do that, but I've known a lot of friends who teach and a lot of high school teachers. That's how they've got new equipment, because the health inspectors come in and ring them up. Okay, so we'll talk about Fat Tom. What bacteria needs to grow? It needs food, acid, really a lack of acid, time, temperature, oxygen, and moisture. The food we talked about. That's why you clean the counters so well at the end of the day. That's why you wipe off everything. Acid, really a lack of acid. That's why you can leave mustard and ketchup on the table. Why? That's why you can leave pickles on the table. Why? High acid content. They need time. We talked about that as it grows along. Temperature. Okay, to kill off the bacteria, we talked about that. Most bacteria need to go way below frozen, way below zero for most bacteria to be killed off. Frozen is usually 32 if it's a water-based substance. All right. The boiling usually kills off most of the bacteria. Most bacteria need oxygen to grow. The big exception to that, what is the B word? But botulism, right? Botulism is considered a weapon of mass destruction. How I describe, I've only seen it once in all my years of cooking. That was before September 11th, so then you just got away with it by throwing out. Now you've got to call hazmat. And I tell the students, I said, it's not like when the can got dropped and there's a dent in the can. Picture Alien where something is trying to break out from inside. It looks like something is inside the can or the jar trying to get out. And they also need moisture. That's why all those dried products can stay stay up in your refrigerator. Defrosting. You need to defrost things correctly to minimize bacteria growth and to prevent food or cross-contamination. There's only 4 approved methods. Placing food in the refrigerator in an appropriate food storage container where it won't drip. Even if it's wrapped up from the freezer, you got to have it in that storage container because they drip. Under running cold water, everybody still wants to blast hot water, right? Under running cold water, in the sink in an approved container where it won't drip on something else. So what do students do? They put the food in the sink, turn on hot water, and what happens? No container, and it goes right here. One part is getting heavily defrosted. Nothing else is changing. Meanwhile, you're in the danger zone. Running cold water. Alton Brown has a great video. If you look up Alton Brown and how to prepare duck, it's called What's Up Duck. He does a great segment on showing why running cold water is the fastest way to defrost something. It's called What's Up Duck. If you can find it on YouTube or the Food Channel. But if you have in the sink, how can it drip on something else? Because if you don't have it in a container, what happens? Somebody else puts something in the sink. All right. Defrosting is part of the cooking process. Everybody says, what's that? What's the most common thing? French fries, right? Take it out of the freezer, right in the fryer. There's no defrosting. It's a potentially hazardous food because it's already been blanched once. All right, right out. Frozen hamburger patties. All right. Defrost in the microwave, but then you need to cook it immediately. Why? Because if you've all defrosted things in the microwave, what happens? You've got a hot spot here, but not a hot spot there, a cold spot there, a cold spot hot over there. Rodents and insects, an ounce of prevention. Screens and doors on windows. Inspect boxes. I receive my product, I have my students receive my product outside the door. Why? Because yes, I've seen product come in with bugs crawling on the outside. I've seen little mouse holes crawling inside the box. That goes back on the truck. Don't get that anywhere near my building. No holes in the wall. Trash area is clean and covered. When you have a problem, don't handle it yourself. Call a professional exterminator. All right. License and experience with commercial kitchens, because what else students try and do? I'll take care of it myself. All right. We were, as I said earlier, recently in Hawaii. I saw 2 cockroaches on top of the stove one night. Next morning, what I do? Call an exterminator. And the guy comes in and he basically accuses me of imagining it. He pulls out the stove, can't find. He says, this is like the cleanest place I've been to. He says, normally people wait till there's this whole major invasion. I said, I know if there's 2, there's probably more. And he accused me of dreaming about it. And but he thanked me. He said, he's put stuff down anyway. And this is because what happens, most people wait till it's completely overridden. His theory was, since there was nothing for them to eat, since I do, Hawaii, that's a major problem with bugs, I keep everything scrupulously clean. He said they probably just came in from some other condo and went back out, left, All right, keep it clean. Use license. I did not try and get chemicals and spray behind the stove and counters myself, and I know what I'm doing. All right, HACCP, developed by Pillsbury and NASA in the late 50s for the space program, stands for Hazardous Analysis Critical Control Point. Chefs, owners, and managers determine where biological, chemical, physical, and cross-contamination hazards can contaminate food. They set up written procedures covering each such event and how to handle the food properly so there's no contamination. Monitor the process and keep records. So that's a key part of HACCP. Okay, so we got a few minutes to do. We've got some review questions. These are the questions I give my students. What's cross-contamination? Anybody remember? Cross-contamination is when you do what? Take one hazardous food and expose it to a potentially hazardous food, or take what? One less potentially hazardous food and expose it to more potentially hazardous. How often should you calibrate a thermometer? Every time you what? Begins with the D word? Drop it, or every 2 or 3 days? What is each element of fat Tom store? So it's food, acid, temperature, time, oxygen, and moisture. 4 proper methods of defrosting. In the cooler for a couple of days. What next? Running cold water in a container. 3. That's the one everybody forgets. And number 4, microwave. But then you got to what? Yes, ma'am.
I've heard it's also okay to if you're leaving it in soaking water, as long as you change that water out every 30 minutes. Is that?
Depends on your health department. In California, that's not allowed. Federal government does not allow that as well. It's you only really approved for things that can be defrosted very quickly. For example, frozen tilapia. Frozen tilapia steak is this thick. You can do it very quickly. Most places, and again, for the ServSafe exam, don't. In your classrooms, don't. Because why? I think in your classrooms you got to start getting ready. Hopefully you're doing, everybody's doing such a wonderful job that everybody wants to cook for what? The rest of their life. Well, maybe not the rest of it, at least the next 10 years, right? So start them on the right way, the absolute right way. I don't tell them that at home I will reheat leftovers 2 or 3 times. I will say at the end of the day, this has to go home. If you want to take it home, fine. If not, throw it out. Why? It's been reheated once already, chef. Perfect. Okay. What are the 3 ways to prevent rodent infestation? What? Check boxes outside. All right. What else? Screens. Screens in the windows. Who's got screens in the windows in their school? You do. Basically, nobody ever does, right? I had to, argue for several years. I want a screen in my back door in my classroom. But none of the other classrooms have screens. They're not doing food. They're not doing food. Okay. So got the screen in the back, pull up the health code says, okay, great, we'll put it up. All right. What else? Cover up the holes in the wall. Biggest thing is look at stuff before it comes in. Really, that's the biggest thing before look at stuff before it comes in. Keep the door closed. Screen doors, keep the door closed. Students will leave the door and they'll go have a conversation for 10 minutes outside the door, right? All right. What's temperature abuse? Frosting, freezing, defrosting, freezing. I don't want to take any, we got to get this right. I don't want to take any more candy home with me. You should always wash your hands for how many seconds? 20 seconds. Who said 20? Who said 20? Who said 20? You said 20? Okay. Oops. What's the danger zone? Oh, you always need to label foods you have prepared. Why? Keep from having to throw them out when the health department comes in, but more importantly, so you know when they're made and when to get rid of them. All right, when they're made and when they get rid of them. I will, every Friday at my place is, the challenge to use up all the leftover days. But occasionally we go into the walk-in and what we find? Something that's been there, this data expired, 3.5 months ago. I don't know how, considering we clean out it every Friday, I don't know how this happens, but it's there, all right? And that's what you need to, why is the danger zone so important? Bacteria grows the fastest. Okay, 5 examples of potentially hazardous food. Raw chicken. Raw beef. Cooked chicken. Cooked beef. All right, what else? What's that? Cooked rice. Excellent. 5 non-potentially hazardous foods. Chips. Dried pasta. Dried beans. Okay, canned food, as long as the can's not open. All right, generally baked goods. Generally baked unless they've got a cream in it, okay? That changes the nature of it. All right, that's me. There are cards there. If you would like a copy of the PowerPoint demonstration, or the PowerPoint, hopefully it works better for you than at the beginning here. If you'd like a copy of the PowerPoint, email me, please, and I will just reply to that email with the copy of the PowerPoint. Get your students cooking right away, because now, yes, again, that's not enough for serve safe, but that's enough to get your students safe going in the kitchen. Any questions before lunch? Any questions for after lunch? Any questions for during lunch? Nope, that's it. Well, thank you very much. I hope you can use that in your classroom. Yay. I've got a bunch of chocolate here. Yes, you have a question? Either that or you have a question. You're just reaching over your bag. Okay. I've got a bunch of chocolate. Please, I do not want to carry that on the airplane home. And I believe we're off to lunch.